there's nothing worse than having a hose that just doesn't work. And here at Anderson Seed and Garden, we try and carry the best possible quality hoses. In fact, we don't even have the bad hoses. We just carry the good ones. So there's a lot of things you want to look for when you're looking for a really good hose. And probably number one, you want a reinforced hose. This is actually an 8-ply hose. These are made by Gilmore, and they're called Flexogen. And they're probably the heaviest duty hose that you can get out there, and they come in all sizes. So we're talking 25 foot, 50 foot, 75, 100 foot, and then they also come in different diameters. So there's 5/8 inch and 3/4 inch that we carry in stock all the time. They have a much heavier duty coupling on there, so nice brass coupling. It's got a kink resistant coil on there to keep it from kinking next to the faucet, and a good heavy duty brass connector. And Flexogen, these hoses just are probably the best hose that you can buy out there. Very rarely will they ever kink. They hold up for years and years and years, and if you ever do have trouble with them, you can actually get them replaced by Gilmore. There's a little process you go through, and they'll actually replace the hose for you. So one of the best hoses that's out there, it's called Flexogen. It's made by Gilmore. Actually have a lifetime guarantee. I don't know how long a lifetime of a hose is supposed to be, but they really do stand behind their hoses, and they replace them if there's ever problems. Another really good quality hose, this is an all rubber hose. The Flexogen are made with rubber and vinyl, so they're reinforced, but this is a 100% rubber hose, and also good heavy duty zinc connections on this one, zinc instead of brass. But nice thing about the rubber is they hold up really well. They can handle a lot of abuse and still retain their flexibility, and they hold up really well. So Dramm makes some really nice hoses in all kinds of colors. So they come in orange and blue and green and yellow and red. So kind of designer colors if you want to have a hose that's got a little bit different color to it. But again, very heavy, real good quality hose, but you know, it's got that flexibility in there and a kink resistance that you want in a hose. You don't have to worry about getting where you need to use the water and then having no water because they're all kinked up. So Dramm makes a great hose. So carry the best quality hoses here at Anderson's that you can possibly get in all kinds of different sizes and diameters of hose. So the larger the diameter, the more volume of water that the hose can carry. Along with the regular hoses, we've got soaker hoses, and these soaker hoses sweat. They basically just weep water out of the hose, and you can see in the picture right here, it's got a pretty good picture right there. You can see that the water's just kind of beading out of the hose. That's really what it looks like. When you use a soaker hose, you hook it up to your faucet and you turn the water on. Just a little bit of pressure. You don't want to turn on full blast. You just want a little bit of pressure. As the hose fills up, it will actually build up pressure inside, and then will start to weep out the walls of the hose. So this is a recycled rubber. So it's made from recycled car tires. So they grind the tires up, they turn into hoses, and so I've got some at home that probably lasted for 7 or 8 years. Hold up really well. Easy to patch if you ever end up getting a hole that develops in them. Easy to fix, but they hold up really well. And the consistency of how much they water all along the hose works really pretty well. This is a 50-footer. You can hook them up to about 100, probably 100 feet is as long as of a run as you'd want to go. So you get the consistency of the watering through a hose like this. And this is a flat weeping hose. And it weeps just like the soaker hose that I just showed you, but it's a flat, so it coils up really nicely, and then when you fill it with water, it expands out, and then it sweats out of the hose as well too. Great thing about soaker hoses is you will use 70% less water than you would with a sprinkler to enjoy the same or even better results than a sprinkler would produce. So a soaker hose can cut your water usage down by 70%, and it puts the water just right down where the hose is going to go. So if we take the hose out and we lay it down, say a row of carrots that we want to germinate, it will just water right along the hose, but it will soak out probably 6 to 8 inches on both sides. And so you can do a 12 to probably 18-inch wide section with a soaker hose like this, from 25 to 50 to 75 feet long without any problem. And also very durable. These hold up for a long time. But the nice thing is they'll distribute water all along the hose in probably a 12-inch wide section, and just puts the water right into the root zone. Doesn't spray out all over the place. You have much less evaporation, and it's very effective. Puts the water right into the root zone where the plants need it. So like I said, 70% less water to enjoy the same results or better than with a sprinkler with a soaker hose. So at Anderson Seed, we've got the best variety of hoses that you can find in all kinds of sizes, shapes, and styles, and they can help you get the job done that you need to get taken care of. Cache Valley usually gets some drier than usual summers, and a lot of times we're worried about water and how to keep the lawn looking green and beautiful, because in the spring the lawn looks great, but then by the time the heat of the summer kicks in, then it's struggling. We feel like we're watering so much to try and keep the lawn looking good. Not only do we want to put on a good fertilizer consistently, probably every 8 to 10 weeks we should be fertilizing the lawn, but there's some things that we can do to really help the soil retain moisture and actually draw moisture down into the soil, help the soil retain that moisture longer. One of those products is a new product, and it's called Hydretain. The Hydretain comes in a hose end applicator like this, and it also comes in a granule, so you can apply it just like a fertilizer. So you'd use a broadcast spreader, a drop spreader, and apply it just like you would a fertilizer. But what the Hydretain does is it's an all-natural product. It gets down into the soil, helps the soil retain more moisture, but it's very attractive to water. And so even in the morning when there's dew on your lawn, it'll actually pull that moisture from the dew down into the soil, bring it down to the root system area where the grass can pick it up and utilize it. We can use it in gardens, we can use it in flower beds, we can use it in shrub areas, and especially on lawns, on turf, to really help utilize the water that we're getting to the best of our ability. This will actually cut your water usage down by 25 to 50% depending on your soil type and depending on the kind of moisture that you get. So you just want to take your garden hose and screw that on nice and tight, and then it's got a dial on the back side. You just turn that and it'll turn your water on. Get a little bit of water coming, there we go, and it sprays out, and you just like do a nice even application on the lawn. With the Hydretain, after you've put made the initial application, you really want to water the lawn to try and get that to penetrate down into the soil. So we don't want it just sitting right on the surface after you make that application. And this is enough to do about 5,000 square feet. And probably if you have a little bit better water pressure, you'll get a much broader spray as well too. But with the Hydretain, make that application, cover about 5,000 square feet with your hose end applicator, then turn your sprinklers on for a light cycle afterwards. That'll wash the Hydretain down into the soil where it will bind with the soil and then attract water to it. So it'll make your soil more absorbent and actually get that water to penetrate in better. Then once that water's into your soil, it'll hold that moisture there where your plants can pick it up and utilize it. So Hydretain, new product for consumers to use in their lawn, in their flower beds, in their garden, really helps save water. We're talking 25 to 50% less water to do the same job that we were getting before, and it's all natural, breaks down in about 90 to 120 days. So you get about 3 months of control with it, and 3 months of that extra water holding. So I'd recommend you put it on latter part of May, first part of June, and it'll get you through that whole hot part of the summer. And the Hydretain will do a great job at helping you save water and hopefully save some money as well too. There's a lot of different insects that can cause problems with trees and shrubs, and in many cases sometimes we have to wait until the damage has already been done before we can do too much to get the insects under control because we just didn't realize they were out there. But there's a really neat product that's come out in the last few years that takes the guesswork out. You can do it preventatively to stop all kinds of insects before the damage occurs, especially with trees like locusts or maples that tend to get borers or aphids really badly. You know it's just going to be a problem year after year. The product's called Tree and Shrub Drench, and it's made from Fertilome, and it's systemic, and it's really, really easy to apply. There's really only 4 things that you need to do it. You need the product, you need a measuring cup, you need a 5-gallon bucket, and you need a measuring tape to measure the tree. And that's all you need, and it lasts for 6 to 8 months. So pretty much it'll last the entire growing season. If you do it in say March or April, really early on before the tree really leaves out, it'll absorb it up through the root system, it'll run it through the circulatory system in the tree, and it'll protect the tree for pretty much the entire growing season from insects that suck sap out of the tree or eat on the leaves. Works great, like I said, on aphids and borers, does a very, very good job for those kinds of insects. So the first thing we want to do is we want to measure the circumference of our trunk, not the diameter but the circumference. And since I don't have a tape measure with me, we're going to use my layman's tape measure, and we're going to see how big around. Usually you want to measure it about 1.5 to 2 feet off the ground. Let's see, and that's about 18 inches. So we've got an 18-inch circumference on our tree. With the Tree and Shrub Drench, this particular product, use 1 ounce per inch of tree circumference. So since we're 18 inches all the way around the tree, we're going to use 18 ounces of this product. So what we do is we'd open the bottle up, take our measuring cup. This is 8-ounce measuring cup. So we'd fill it up, pour it into our bucket. I've got about 3 gallons of water in here. It really doesn't matter how much water you mix it in, as long as you're able to put that full amount of water around the one tree that we just measured. So we'd measure out 18 ounces of the Tree and Shrub Insect Drench into our measuring cup, pour it into the 5-gallon bucket, and then basically all you've got to do is just pour that evenly right around the trunk of the tree so that it absorbs and saturates in all the way around the tree. You want to try and get it as evenly as possible, and you want it to saturate in, not run off and go somewhere else. So just like that, that insecticide is going to penetrate down into the soil. There's plenty of feeder roots right in this particular area of the tree, just within a 18-inch circle all the way around the tree. There's plenty of feeder roots to absorb that insecticide up, run it through the entire tree. It takes, on a 15 to 20 foot tree, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to work its way up through the tree. So you want to put it on fairly early, but then it's going to protect the tree through the entire year against borers, against aphids, and a lot of other insects that damage and cause problems with trees. Usually each year we have an abundance of a couple things in Cache Valley, and 2 of those things are alkaline soil and lots of water. And we've had lots of water, and we definitely have lots of alkaline soil this year. And that causes a big problem, especially with all kinds of plants, and that's iron deficiency or iron chlorosis. And we've seen a lot of that this year, and it's a really common problem that we see year after year after year because of the combination of some of the factors we have here just that are in Cache Valley. A standard leaf on a plant should look a little bit like that, and just a nice green looking leaf, and that's what the leaf should look like. When it starts to show some iron deficiency, the leaf is going to actually look like that, and that's a classic sign of iron deficiency in a plant. You'll see the newest growth on the plant first start to yellow up, so most of the older growth will still stay green, but the newer growth will turn a lighter color, and you'll see dark green veins running through the leaves, just like on the sample that I've got right there. And this is a vine. This is actually a trumpet vine. Trumpet vines are notorious for having a little bit of iron deficiency, but we see it in burning bush, we see it in tomatoes, we see it in maples, we see it in all kinds of plants. And This is a tomato leaf as well too. If you can see that tomato, it's got those darker veins running through that lighter leaf tissue. And as I said, shows up in the newest growth first, starts to work its way through the rest of the plant, and as the plants become iron deficient, as they become chlorotic, they will be much more susceptible to wind and sunburn, and so then you start to get some brown crisping along the edges of the leaves, and the entire leaf can go brown and crispy as well too. But it usually starts with the iron deficiency. So the best ways to control that is with a chelated iron product. Now, a chelated product is kind of broken down or pre-digested for the plant, so the plant can pick it up and utilize it a lot easier. One of our favorite products is made right here in Logan, and it's made by a company called Bicor, and it's called Iron Combo Chelate. Now, the Combo Chelate has a lot of different micronutrients in it, but it's got tons of chelated iron. In fact, it's got about almost 5% chelated iron in there that the plants can pick up very quickly, very readily, and utilize that, and it'll green the plants up. Very quickly. And Combo Chelate, you mix in water, and so you take 1 to 2 tablespoons of this, mix it up in water, and then water your plants with it. One thing that we found to be very effective with the Combo Chelate is to mix a little bit of spreader sticker with it. The spreader sticker is a surfactant, and it mixes with the iron, and it makes the iron stick onto the plant a little bit longer, and it makes it penetrate in quicker, and it will also make it actually spread through the plant faster. So using a spreader sticker like this, it will make your iron, especially your Combo Chelate, even more effective. We found it works great on petunias. It's really good for hanging baskets and planters. It's good for smaller flowers, especially perennials, smaller shrubs. You can spray it on so it'll be absorbed in right through the leaves, or you can also just water your plants with it, and it'll pick it up through the root system. If you have larger trees, I mean really big trees, like maples, especially silver maples, we see iron deficiency in lindens a lot as well too. So there's quite a few trees that are kind of susceptible to iron chlorosis or the iron deficiency. You've got to go with a product like this powdered chelated iron. Now, these are two very good products. The biggest difference between these two is the EDDHA, this one, the purple label. It will work no matter what your soil pH is. And so if your soil pH is really high, the soil pH really does make a difference with iron, because it will bind up the iron in the soil and make it so it's unavailable to your plants. So you can put all kinds of different iron products on your plants, and if your pH is really high, your plants will never ever be able to get the iron. But if you use a product like the EDDHA, this purple label, it doesn't matter what your soil pH is, and it will be used up by the plant very quickly, and it won't get bound up in the soil, and it'll work great. This iron chelate, this 10% right here, this will work if your pH is below about 7.5, maybe 8, and for Cache Valley that works really very well. A lot less expensive than the EDDHA. It does a very good job, very readily available, is quickly picked up by the plants and utilized. But if your pH is higher than 8, it's just not going to work. If you have really large trees and you have a hard time applying the iron on the soil or around the plant, or there's no way you can spray it on the plant, one of our other favorite products is called a tree treat. And the tree treats, you can actually drill a hole into the tree. You insert the little tree treats. They're little tablets that are about that big, and they just go right in the holes. You drill holes into the tree. It doesn't do any damage to the tree, but it puts the nutrient, the iron and the other micronutrients and the nitrogen, right directly into the circulatory system of the tree. And with a large tree, you'd end up doing 5 or 6 or maybe even up to 10 implants, depending on how large the tree is. And these implants will last 2, sometimes even 3 years, and deliver that nutrient to the plants, especially these larger trees that are really hard to spray. And it'll deliver that nutrient right directly into the circulatory system of the tree. It just like spreads through the whole tree as the tree runs sap and water through its circulatory system. It works very well. So great ways to try and control iron deficiency. Don't forget what the iron deficiency looks like. Yellowing leaves, dark green veins, and when you see that, it's a sure sign that you've got some iron deficiency, and we've got the products to fix that. every year there's just a time in the spring where the bugs just really start to go like crazy, and we've hit that time of year, and aphids are just having a heyday out there with all the moisture, and the plants are green and things are growing like crazy. It's like a perfect time for the aphids, and so they're really starting to become active. I've got some pepper plants right here that have aphids all over them, and hopefully you can see what they look like. There's a lot of different kinds of aphids. There's some right there by my finger. There's all kinds of different aphids, and they're attacking all kinds of different plants right now. So we're seeing aphids on roses, on cherry trees, on basically everything that is green and beautiful and tastes good. Snowball bushes, very common for the aphids to be on, and they love peppers. For some reason they just think pepper plants are just the best, so they love peppers. There's some really good ways we can control the aphids. A lot of different methods, different things we can use on different plants. Aphids, of course, love maples like crazy, and so during the summertime you'll see the leaves go real shiny, and you'll see sap dripping out of the trees. That's a sure sign that you've got aphids. So it's not an uncommon problem. In fact, it's a real common problem that we have. And there's a lot of different ways we can control it. The first one is with ladybugs, and we sell ladybugs in containers. And I've got them in the refrigerator, and it keeps them happy while they're waiting to be taken home. And the aphids, the ladybugs will eat aphids about as fast as they can get them. Each container has about 1,000 to 1,500 ladybugs, and you release those in the evening. The ladybugs will go out, and they'll just get all over the plants, and they'll just go and eat those aphids as fast as they can get them. So ladybugs are a great way to control a very large area, especially an area that you don't really want to spray. And the ladybugs within a week or two will actually clean all the aphids out of a very, very large tree. In fact, one container of ladybugs can do a 1/4 of an acre yard, and as long as there's food there for them, the ladybugs will stay and eat the aphids. But as soon as the aphids are all gone, they'll go and find lunch somewhere else. So the ladybugs will stick around and take care of the aphids. Now, if you've got a really big tree and you can't spray it and the ladybugs just aren't going to take care of it, there's a really good way to control that. This is a product that's called the Tree and Shrub Systemic Insect Drench. It's not a spray. You don't spray it on the trees. We're actually going to mix it up in water, and we're going to water the trees with this particular product. All you have to do is take a tape measure and measure the circumference of the tree. So if your tree is this big around, you want to measure all the way around the tree at about waist high. So somewhere around waist high, just take a tape measure, go all the way around the tree, figure out how many inches there are in that tree, and then you use 1 ounce of the Tree and Shrub Systemic Drench for every inch of distance, every inch of circumference around the tree. Put it in a 5-gallon bucket of water and water the tree with it. It works great. Usually I'll take my bucket, I'll measure the tree. Let's say it's 15 inches around. I'll take 15 ounces of the Tree and Shrub, and I'll put that in the 5-gallon bucket, add 3 gallons, 4 gallons of water, whatever amount of water I need to water that tree with, and then right around the trunk, you can just pour that on the ground right around the trunk. It'll absorb it up through the root system, run it through the entire circulatory system of the tree, and the Tree and Shrub Drench will kill the aphids from the inside out. Basically, it'll work on any kind of insect that will attack the tree. So anything that's sucking sap out of the leaves, like the aphids, or it works on borers, it works on gall, and it works on a lot of different insects that attack the trees. But it won't bother your beneficial insects like the ladybugs, won't bother praying mantids. It really does a great job. If you have some edibles, we can't use this on an edible plant. So we can't use this on a cherry tree, we can't use this on a peach tree, definitely can't use it on our pepper plants, and so we would want to go with a different product. So if you want to go with a natural control, kind of like the ladybugs, the neem pie right here from Natural Guard. The neem pie does an excellent job on aphids. It's a combination of neem oil and pyrethrins, which are 2 natural insecticides. Plus it'll take care of diseases as well too. So if you have a little bit of powdery mildew, this will take care of that as well too. But a very effective way to control the aphids if you want to use it in your vegetable garden, if you want to use it on your cherry tree, anything that's edible, you can use this right up to basically right up to the day of harvest. So if you're going to be harvesting cherries, you can spray this the day before you pick it and wash your cherries off and eat them and not have any problems with it. So the neem pie will do a really good job at controlling the aphids. Very safe, all natural ingredients, really does a great job. Otherwise, we've got products like malathion or permethrin. This is the malathion right here. And the malathion and the permethrin do a very good job at controlling the aphids. Again, safe to use on fruits and vegetables, safe to use on ornamental plants plants, flowers, shrubs, trees, you name it. Some very good sprays that we've got to get those aphids under control, and they're difficult to control once they start to curl those leaves down, and the corners of the leaves will really start to curl down when you have aphids on your plants, and it's kind of hard to get some spray up underneath the leaves to take care of that. So we really have had great results with the ladybugs, and very good results with the tree and shrub drench, because they'll work even after the aphids have really started to curl those leaves up. A little bit more difficult to control them with a contact insecticide like the neem pie or the malathion. So aphids, big problem this year, and it's a good time to try and get those under control, either with your ladybugs or some of our other insecticides that we've got. Good time to get those under control. This year the roses have just been gorgeous, and we've got a lot of good roses to choose from here at Anderson Seed and Garden. I've got some great colors and some beautiful, just some beautiful flowers that smell really good. But I'm going to show you a couple tricks today how to keep your roses looking good throughout the summertime, and actually how to prune them so that they continue blooming. So best thing to have is a good sharp pruner, and we're going to take a look at this rose right here. This one's called Opening Night. Very pretty red rose, and it's also got a little bit of a fragrance, so a really nice rose, very prolific in the garden. It'll produce a lot of flowers, and of course this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, it's got 5 buds on it right now, but there's some things that I see on this rose that need to be fixed, and then I'll show you how to prune some of these spent flowers as well too. So down here in the bottom we've got a couple canes that just aren't going like they ought to, and it's really best to take these out on a rose bush. So if you're looking at your roses throughout the summertime and you see some canes that just really aren't performing like they should, or starting to look a little bit diseased, that's when you want to get in there and prune those out. So we've got 2 canes, one right here. I always like to prune back to a leaf bud, and try and do it on a 45-degree angle. So you want your pruners to be on a 45-degree angle in relationship to the stem that's coming up. You always want to prune back to about 1/4 of an inch above the bud, and I like to prune on that 45-degree angle with the angle pointing in the same direction as the bud. So I just cut that piece out right there. See how it's looking kind of shriveled and dried up? That's just a piece that needs to come out, but we trim back to nice green, clean tissue right there. So that should really help and encourage the rose to grow some more. There's the bud that I cut back to. You can see there's about 1/4 of an inch. Hopefully you can get in there and see. About 1/4 of an inch above that bud on a 45-degree angle is where I prune that out. And I'm going to prune this one right here as well too, because it doesn't look very good also. Let's do a little bit of maintenance pruning while we're thinking about it. Now, during the summer, to keep your roses blooming and keep them flowering all the time, you really want to prune out flowers that have pretty much finished blooming. So we've got some new buds that are just starting to open up on this one. We've got some buds that are just finishing up, and it's kind of nice to trim those and bring them inside. But what you're really looking for is 5 leaflet leaves. Roses always produce 5 leaflet leaves. If you can see right there, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves on that leaflet that's coming off the rose. To prune them and to encourage some more flowers, you want to go back about 5 leaflet leaves and prune there. So we've got 5 leaflets right here. This is the first leaf that has 5 leaflets on it. The one up above it, just right above it, only has 3. So we're going to count back from the first 5 leaflet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to prune back to this 5th 5 leaflet leaf. Same instructions as taking that cane out. 1/4 of an inch above the leaflet on a 45-degree angle, pointing in the same direction as the leaflet. And I'm going to prune right there. And so we're going to take that flower bud out and from here on it's going to produce more flowers coming off this rose. So it's really important that you get in there and you cut your spent flowers so it'll encourage more growth and keep the roses looking good through the summertime, and then they'll really produce flowers for you in the fall. And you can trim them back a little bit farther if you think you need to prune back a little bit farther, but you want to do at least a minimum of 5 leaflet leaves, and that's where you want to prune it. To keep them blooming, not only do we need to prune, but we need to fertilize, and that fertilizer is what's going to encourage new growth to come out. Where that new growth comes out, that's where those roses are going to form. And so make sure and use your rose food with systemic. Fertilum's got a great one. Rose food with systemic, we use 1/4 cup per rose once a month throughout the whole summertime. So usually I'll do one in May, do one in June, do one in July, do one in August, and then we're done for the year. So 1/4 cup of the rose and flower food from Fertilome will keep your roses blooming and looking really good throughout the summertime, and also will control insects. So that systemic insecticide is absorbed up through the root system, spreads through the rose, lasts in the rose for usually about 4 to 6 weeks. That's why we like to do it every month, because that fertilizer and that systemic lasts about 6 weeks, and if we do it a little bit more frequently, it'll kind of keep the rose producing flowers and also control those insects. If you have some outbreaks of insects or diseases, which we can have, especially when we have a lot of humidity and we have really cold nights or cool nights and warm days, we start to see powdery mildew. Also see a lot of aphids and other problems. The 2-in-1 systemic drench from Fertilome is excellent because it controls diseases as well as insects, and you just mix it up in water the rose with it. You can actually get it on the leaves as well as water the plant with it, let it absorb it up through the root system and also through the leaves, and it'll control insects and diseases for about 6 weeks also. And then if you just have a quick outbreak of insects, the new high yield systemic insect spray, excellent for controlling all kinds of insects, root weevils that attack roses, aphids, caterpillars, any type of insect that are attacking your roses, or even other flowers and shrubs and ornamentals. The systemic insect spray from High Yield does a great job. So the key to really keeping your roses looking good throughout the summer is to make sure do your maintenance pruning at least every couple of weeks, and be sure and fertilize monthly to keep those roses healthy and blooming and looking good all summer long. We've got our rows spaced about 3 to 4 feet apart, and I've got soaker hoses running down each row of corn, and the soaker hoses are just like really close to the stalks. And there's water running through the hoses right now, and so you can actually see the moisture coming out of the hoses. And if I leave them on for about 3 or 4 hours, it will soak out all the way across. You can kind of see how the moisture is saturating down deeper into the soil, into the root zone of the corn, but it'll kind of seep out a little bit as well too. And it just puts the water right there, uses very little water, it's very efficient, and just puts that water right in the root zone, right where the corn needs it. So by using soaker hoses, I've been able to cut our water usage down by about 70%, but it's also extremely effective on how it gets the water into the root zone and very little evaporation off. And then I don't have to worry about the weeds coming up in between the rows as well too, because the water is just right there where the plants are. So really the only weeding that I've got to do is just right down those rows where the soaker hoses are. It makes for a lot less work and a lot less water consumption. Every year I have gardeners that come in and they're super concerned about their squashes, whether it's their zucchinis or their pumpkins or their winter squashes, and they've been just performing great. They've been just ready to start harvesting, and all of a sudden the plants just die almost overnight. And it's a pretty common problem that we deal with. And if you see, your plant's doing this, that's pretty common for a little bit of what we call squash bug damage. And squash bugs are very common in Cache Valley. They attack all kinds of summer squash, so zucchinis and crooknecks, as well as your winter squash, banana squash, Hubbards, butternuts, and also pumpkins. But the plants look great one day, and then the next day they just start wilting like crazy and they don't come back. And so squash bugs have a real unique look to them. They look kind of like, there we go, they look kind of like an elongated stink bug, but they are darker brown. They've got kind of a diamond pattern on the back, and they're probably about an inch long or so, and those are the adults. What they do is they kind of hang out underneath the squash during the day, and then they'll sting the plant just right where the vines come up out of the soil, and if they sting the vine enough, it will do enough damage that the water and nutrient can't run up through the plant, and all of a sudden the plant will really start to wilt. And the young, like the nymphs, look like that. So they're a little bit smaller, a little bit grayer, and a little harder to detect. The eggs that they lay are usually on the undersides of the leaves, and they're a bright orange color. So bright orange. You can squish those eggs when you notice them. Just take your finger and your thumb and just squish those eggs. But if you don't, all of a sudden you'll have nymphs all over the place, and those nymphs turn into the adults, and they do a lot of damage on your squash, your plants. Seriously, they'll look great one day, and the next day they'll be laying on the ground. And squash bugs are pretty damaging for a lot of gardeners in Cache Valley, and they're difficult to control, so not a lot of insecticides work really well on them. One that's an all-natural one is the Triple Action Plus. This is from Fertilome. Not as effective on killing the adults, but very effective on the nymphs and also on killing the eggs. So this has neem oil and pyrethrum in it, and fairly effective on controlling the squash bugs if you get them early. So if you start early, usually we'll try and spray the ground around the plants and the vines right where they come up out of the ground, and then try and do a little bit of spray up underneath the leaves, and that's the best way to use the Triple Action. So it does a great job to really help prevent the squash bugs. But if they have gotten a little bit more aggressive, and all of a sudden you've got adults out there, and you really see tons of them. A product like the Broad Spectrum insecticide from Fertilome, a little bit more potent. And we also have the Indoor Outdoor from High Yield. These are two stronger products, but still very, very safe to use on fruits and vegetables. This contains permethrin, the Indoor Outdoor. Excellent product, very broad spectrum. You can use it on all kinds of fruits and vegetables, as well as lawns and flowers and shrubs and trees. The Broad Spectrum from Fertilome is really nice because it's in a ready-to-use format. You can spray right up underneath the leaves. You can spray right where the vines come up out of the soil. You can spray the soil around it. Both these products very, very effective on the adult squash bugs as well as the nymphs. And best thing to do is to always end up squishing those eggs when you see them. But if you've had that problem and didn't know what it was, start watching for those bugs. Look for those brown, kind of stink bug looking adults with that little diamond pattern on the back, and they're doing some damage to your squash. And we've got some options here at Anderson Seed and Garden to get those squash bugs under control, and you can keep harvesting and enjoying your squash for the rest of the summer. Summer usually stands for a lot of flowers. Of course, we have lots of beautiful flowers here at Anderson Seed and Garden, but also stands for harvest. And tomatoes are one thing that people really love to harvest, especially all of our gardeners that come in here. They love to harvest tomatoes. And I've got some beautiful large tomato plants, but to get them to look like this through the summer and to produce flowers and to produce the fruit that you want, there's a couple steps we can do so that you can have the most successful tomatoes that you've ever had. Growing tomatoes in containers works really well, and you can use the same principles out in your garden if you want to just grow your tomatoes out in your garden. But you can use any type of pot This happens to be a peat pot, but you can use a ceramic or a terracotta or plastic or whatever works for you. The key is to start with the best soil available, and Fertilome Ultimate Potting Mix is wonderful soil. So we use the Ultimate Potting Mix as our soil for all of our plants in our containers, and it works just wonderfully. It's peat moss, perlite, vermiculite, and a little bit of humate. There's no bark, there's no extra added junk in there. Start with the best soil that you can. The Fertilome Ultimate Potting Mix is one of those. And size of your plant doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. This is a nice 4-inch sized tomato. It's the variety is called Delicious, and the Delicious produces a really big tomato, and they do really quite well in containers, but they'll do great out in your garden as well too. So start with a good plant, pick a good pot, definitely use the best soil possible, and then what we like to do as we're planting is we'll work a little bit of slow release fertilizer into the soil. So our Natural Guard tomato and vegetable food is an organic, natural source of all kinds of nutrient. It's got a high burst of calcium in there to help with blossom end rot and calcium deficiency in the plants, which is a common problem that we see in tomatoes that are grown in containers. Plus it has a whole bunch of mycorrhiza, microbes, and natural bacteria that are really, really beneficial for your soil and will make your plants look great. So the Natural Guard tomato and vegetable food is a wonderful way to start off with. Once you get your soil in, get your tomato planted, work it into the soil around your plant, and try and do it about every 6 weeks to keep the plant fertilized and happy with all the food and nutrient value that it needs. I mentioned blossom end rot. Blossom end rot looks just like this. On a tomato that's ripening, you'll see a darkened brown spot down on the bottom of the tomato, and it can happen on tomatoes that are turning red. It can happen on just tomatoes that are green as well too, but it usually happens from a calcium deficiency in the plant. So to really increase your yield, the calcium chloride that's in the yield booster here will not only help take care of the blossom end rot, so you don't see those black darkened sunken spots on the bottom of your tomatoes, but it'll actually help your tomatoes produce more fruit. So really easy to take this maybe once a month throughout the summertime and just do a light spray on the plants so that the tomatoes can get the calcium that they need to help them produce ripe tomatoes. So this will help them actually ripen up and also set more fruit and prevent the blossom end rot from happening on your tomatoes. If you're having a hard time getting your tomatoes to set fruit, say they're producing a lot of blossoms, like this one right here is producing a lot of blossoms, but if it's not setting any fruit, we can help the plant set some fruit as well too. The tomato and pepper set from Fertilome has some natural growth regulators and hormones in there that'll actually get your plant to start setting fruit. So if you have a lovely, beautiful tomato plant that just doesn't want to start setting fruit, again, just a light spray on the plant will encourage the plant to really start setting fruit and get that fruit to start to develop. And it's been a common problem for a lot of gardeners the last couple of years that the tomato plants are producing blossoms, but they're not producing the fruit that they want. And so a little bit of tomato and pepper set works on squashes and cucumbers and melons, as well as tomatoes and peppers. So this is a very versatile product that'll get your plants to start to set fruit. Now, throughout the summertime, to keep the plant looking healthy, we've used a slow release fertilizer in the pot, but every time you water it, that nutrient kind of leaches out the bottom of the pot, and so to keep them looking really good, we'll use a water soluble fertilizer like the Blooming and Rooting, and this has a really high phosphorus. I'm going to turn this over so you can see. It's a 959.8 fertilizer. That middle number, that phosphorus, that's what stimulates flower production and fruit production, and it's great to keep your tomatoes producing like crazy throughout the summertime. So we'll use the Blooming and Rooting in addition to our tomato and vegetable food throughout the summertime to keep them producing once a week. Use your Blooming and Rooting once a week on your plants. They'll need to be watered almost every day, but if you use the Blooming and Rooting once a week, not only will they produce more blossoms, but they'll produce a lot more fruit, and that fruit will ripen up and you'll be able to use it a lot quicker. So a lot of different tricks we can use to keep our tomato plants looking good. As they get bigger, a larger cage would really help. This is a Handy cage, and these are made right here in Cache Valley. And the Handy cages, very sturdy, sturdy, they last a long time. You take the two pieces apart, you can put them in together in a large tomato plant without breaking the branches off the plant. So as this plant gets bigger, we could actually take this smaller cage off and put the larger cage in and have it just do a great job at keeping the tomato supported up off the ground and help it to produce and to ripen up the fruit a lot quicker. So the tomato cages really help to get that sunlight in there and ripen that fruit up quicker. So a lot of different options, a lot of different things you can do to keep your plants looking good and to keep those tomatoes coming all summer long. Can I get rid of morning glory in my lawn? That's one of the most common questions that we have to answer here at Anderson Seed and Garden. And yes, you can get rid of morning glory. Weed-free zone will take care of basically everything except for grass. It kills all kinds of broadleaf plants, won't hurt grasses. So weed-free zone will kill morning glory, thistles, mallow, clover, dandelions, all your hard to kill weeds, and it won't hurt grass. So there's a great way to get rid of morning glory in the turf, and that's with weed-free zone. Now, this time of year is a great time to get outside and do a little bit of fertilizing. We have a 5-step lawn program here at Anderson Seed and Garden. It's really important that you fertilize regularly with your lawn. The more you fertilize and take care of your lawn properly by proper mowing height, mow a little bit taller, and watering longer periods of time instead of more frequently. So twice a week is perfect for depends on your sprinklers, of course. Half an hour to an hour depending on your sprinklers, and each station works great for most people. But we want to take care of our lawn properly. By doing that, you won't have nearly as many weeds, you won't have as many disease issues. Your lawn will just be a lot healthier and take over the areas that you really want it to take over. And one of the best ways to do that is to fertilize properly. That's our 5-step lawn program, and we are now moving into step number 2. And so usually we do step 2 around Mother's Day through Memorial Day. So we're talking about the first part of May through the 1st or 2nd week of June is probably the best time to go ahead and do that. And that's right here. Our step 2, we recommend that you use either just a great fertilizer like our 23-316, or if you want to go after weeds, you could do the weed-free zone with a fertilizer. And it's also a really good time to control insects. So I'm going to show you all those different products. So if you need a copy of our 5-step lawn program, just stop in here at Anderson Seed and Garden. We'll give you a copy. You can put it on your fridge or put it next to your calendar so you can remember when to put your fertilizer on. So it's a really good way to do that. So first up, if you want to just put a great fertilizer on, our 23-316 is a special blend that we carry here at Anderson Seed. It's our favorite summertime fertilizer because it has a lot of slow release nitrogen in it. So that 23% nitrogen, most of it is slow release, and it will break down over probably about an 8 to 10 week period. So if you put it on around the first part of May, it will last until July for you. It has a burst of 5% iron in there that will really green your lawn up. I mean, give it that really dark green color without making it grow out of control. And the nice thing about the 23-316 is if it's not too hot, it does not have to be watered in immediately, but it really won't start working until you do get it watered in. So I would recommend that after you apply it, within a day or two, you want to get that watered in. That's when it's going to work the best for you. The next option that you have, if you have a lot of weeds and you really want to get those weeds under control as well as fertilize at the same time, let's go to a weed and feed like the weed-free zone. So the weed-free zone right here has a very, very similar fertilizer in it to the 23-316. It has that 5% iron in it, but it's been formulated for very alkaline soils, which is what we have here in Cache Valley. And alkaline soils, we use sulfur to bring the pH of the soil down so it'll be more neutral. So it has about 10% sulfur in there, as well as a really good slow release nitrogen, and it has the best weed killer out there available. So the weed-free zone, best way to use a weed and feed, whether it's the weed-free zone or whether it's our Fertilome Weed Out or our high-yield weed and feed, the best way to do that is to make sure and put it on when your grass is just a little bit damp. So you want to have just a little bit of moisture out there so that when you apply the fertilizer, it'll actually stick to the blades of the grass. So we want that grass to be just a little bit damp when you apply it. Leave it on for 24 hours, and then after the 24 hours, you need to water it in. So make sure that stays on for 24 hours and then water it in afterwards. Otherwise, it's not going to kill your weeds very well. So weed and feed needs to go on so it'll stick to those weeds. Leave it on for 24 hours and then make sure and water it in after that. And it's really best if you can do it either a day or two after you've mowed or a day or two before you're going to mow, so that when you mow it doesn't take all the leaf surface off the weeds. You'll get the best results that way. And you know, cooler temperatures are always good for weed and feed as long as it's not too cold. So usually your daytime temperatures should be somewhere between 55 or 60 and 80 or 85 at the most. We really don't want to go any hotter than that, or else it can do damage to your grass. So great option there. Anytime during the year you can use soil activator. So the soil activator is also excellent to put on this time of year. So our soil activator, that's our Humate, and the Humate has minerals and micronutrients and microbes and microorganisms that are going to stimulate soil activity and really get things going out in your yard. It will make your turf, your lawn, so it will hold 25% more water than it normally is capable of holding. It'll make your fertilizer work better. It'll make your grass just be able to withstand heat and stress and insects and disease much better than it normally would be able to. So the soil activator, we recommend that you apply it twice a year because of how much good it really does for your lawn, and it puts all that nutrient and minerals and microbes back into your soil that have been depleted over time. So the soil activator, great product to put on. But don't forget, also, May is a great time to put a preventative insecticide on. So our grub-free zone works the best on grubs and billbugs, which are going to be showing up in June and July. And the grub-free zone lasts for about 3 months. And so you want to get that on about the first part of May through the middle part of May to try and prevent those insects before they start to do damage. And this year, insects are coming out much quicker than usual, so you probably want to get that on sooner than later to try and prevent those bugs before they do damage out there in your yard. So get your grub-free zone on as soon as you can. It will last for 3 months. It'll really get you a good start on stopping insects before they do any damage. So we've got a lot of different options for you in our 5-step lawn program. Be sure and come in and get a 5-step lawn program if you don't have one, and get a fertilizer on your lawn. It really makes a difference to see that lawn green up, and it will help when it starts to get hot and stressful. Your lawn will do a lot better with that nutrient that it needs. Spring has arrived here at Anderson Seed and Garden, and we've got just a beautiful selection of trees and shrubs and perennials and flowers and everything that you need to beautify and make your yard look great. So we've got just beautiful plants ready to be planted. And the one thing that a lot of people don't know about is here at Anderson Seed and Garden, we carry a 5-year guarantee for a lot of our hardy shrubs and trees that will make it here in Cache Valley. So we're talking about zone 4 plants and below. So anything that's hardy enough for Cache Valley, we'll actually offer a 5-year guarantee you can purchase with your plants. There's no other place in Cache Valley that offers a 5-year guarantee. All we ask is that when you select a hardy tree or shrub like this burning bush right here, beautiful burning bush, will be super colorful in the fall, just bright red, and it's going to look beautiful. It's very hardy for our area. When you buy these plants, we recommend that you plant them according to our directions, and we have a planting guide that'll tell you exactly how to plant those. And then if you purchase a couple of products to plant them with, like our Fertilome Root Stimulator and our Beneficial Mycorrhiza made by Mike, and plant the plants with this, all of our hardy trees and shrubs can be warranted for 5 years. So we've got a 5-year guarantee available. If you buy a little bit of product to plant with it, it will make your plants get established much faster. So the Root Stimulator has a mild rooting hormone in there with a little bit of fertilizer to really get the plants established and get them going. The Beneficial Mycorrhiza is a natural fungus, but it's a good fungus instead of a bad fungus. What it does is as the root system is going out in search of water and nutrient, this actually attaches to the root system and will go out and find that water and nutrient and bring it right back to the plant. And as the plant digests that water and nutrient, gives a little bit of sugar, a little bit of carbohydrates back to the fungus, and it goes out and finds more. So what it will actually do is it will increase your root system in a very short amount of time, speeding up the process of the plants getting established, making them develop a much larger root system than they normally would. It makes them much hardier through the winter time, makes them much more drought and disease resistant, and helps them fight off insects as well too. So the mic really makes a big difference when you're planting your trees and shrubs. All you have to do is just get this all over the root ball as you're planting, put a little bit down the bottom of the hole, and your tree's been inoculated basically with this beneficial fungus. So it's really the mic that makes the difference. The root stimulator just helps the plant really get established a little bit faster, but it's the mic that really makes those plants last and last and last. So any of our hardy trees and shrubs, and we'll tell you which trees are I guess available on our 5-year guarantee, but we'll show you which ones will work. If you buy the right product, plant it with your trees and shrubs, you'll get a 5-year guarantee on your trees. If you want to go with the organic option, we've got this product which is called Kangaroots, and it's made by Bush Doctor. And the Kangaroots is a natural root stimulator, so it's all organic, and it's very, very good for your plants. So again, a little bit of fertilizer in there, beneficial microbes and mycorrhiza that will make your plants get established faster than they ever would otherwise. So we have an organic option if you want to stick with organic gardening, and we also have our traditional option for our 5-year guarantee. So come in, we'll be glad to explain the guarantee to you. We'll show you which plants are available on our 5-year guarantee, and we'll give you those instructions, so show you exactly how to plant those plants. And if you can do that, we'll warranty your plants for 5 years, and there's no one else in Cache Valley that's doing that. Here at Anderson Seed and Garden, we try and give you the best products and the best instructions on how to be successful, and we'll try and make you as successful at home as you can possibly be. Here at Anderson Seed and Garden, we've been brewing compost tea for quite a few years, and you may have tried it before in the past. But we've got a special promotion that we're going to do this year that will be one of the best we've ever done with compost tea. Before I really explain the promotion, I'm going to tell you what the compost tea does. Now, a compost tea is basically a natural fertilizer. It usually comes from worm castings, and it's full of microbes and microorganisms that break down all kinds of different materials. So it'll break down decomposing organic matter, it'll help break down pesticides, it will basically pre-digest fertilizers and nutrients and make it available to the plant. So those little microbes and microorganisms, they basically eat up and digest whatever's out there. It can be diseases, it can be nutrient, it can be organic matter, it can be even toxins that have built up in your soil. So the compost tea is amazing in how it will break down materials that are out in your soil and free up nutrient, make it available to your plants. So what we've done in the past is we've had tea bags basically like this. This is from a company called Extreme Gardening, and when we carry these tea bags, you can brew your own. And the best way to brew the tea is you take the tea bags that have the worm castings, and it's got kelp in there and molasses and humate, and there's a lot of different materials in there to feed the microbes and to make them multiply. So you want to take that basic tea bag, and we put the nutrient package in with it, and then we put it in a great big brewer, which is a 75-gallon tank, and it infuses air into the tank. And so we infuse air into that for at least 24 hours. You can do it longer as well too, but for 24 hours we'll infuse air into that tank, and it just kind of percolates that tea. Well, what happens is the millions of microbes that are in the compost tea, they start to multiply. and they multiply and they multiply. I like that aeration in that water, and they multiply until there's billions of them. So they will multiply exponentially in just a short amount of time. And the more microbes that are in your compost tea, the more effective it works. So we've got the compost tea in the brew bags like this, but we also have a liquid form which comes from Bush Doctor, and this is one you can just like mix up in water and then percolate it. We use an air stone. If you've got a smaller, like a 5-gallon container, you want to percolate it, do it yourself. It's really easy to do, but the microbrew works great. But what we're going to do that's a little bit different this year is we're going to add a little bit more fertilizer in with our compost tea. And the fertilizer we're adding in is this Fertilixir from Seedlingers. Now the Fertilixir from Seedlingers is an all-natural fertilizer. It will be very compatible as a compost tea. It'll have the earthworm castings in there, it will have the kelp, it will have everything that it needs, plus a little bit of an extra boost in there, and we're going to brew it every single day. So we'll have compost tea here at the store for you to pick up every single day. You can bring your own jugs and you can fill up your own jugs, but what we're offering is we're going to do, and this is just a prototype of what our container is going to look like, but we'll have containers that will look very similar to this, and it'll have our logo on there, it'll have Seedlingers logo on there as well too, and you can purchase the containers, and they should be right around $8 for a container, but you can bring the container back all summer long and refill it for free. So basically you'll be able to buy a container instead of having to scrounge one of your milk jugs or a 5-gallon bucket or something up to bring in and fill up. You can actually come in and buy one of our containers, and you'll be able to bring that specific container back in with our logo on it, and you'll be able to refill it as many times as you need during the summertime for free. So initial purchase of the container, and then you can come in and get free refills all summer long. So it'll be a nice heavy-duty durable container. You'll be able to use it all season long, and every time you bring it in, we'll be glad to just fill it up with a gallon of compost tea you can take in and fertilize your plants with it. So what you really want to do with the compost tea is when you're transplanting plants, or if you've got plants that are struggling a little bit and you want to just perk them up and make them grow, with that extra Seedlingers in there with our compost tea brewing, you'll be able to water those plants with it. It'll perk them up, it'll give them a burst of energy, but it'll also do a lot of other things in your soil. Like I said, it'll break down toxins or other fertilizers that have built up over time. It will break those down and decompose them, digest the fertilizer, make that available to your plants, and then if you also get it all over the plant, like if you pour the compost tea on, say, your tomato plant or your squash plant, it'll actually break down diseases that may be developing on the plant, like powdery mildew. It'll actually eat up the powdery mildew as well too. Gets in there, breaks down organic matter, so if you put a lot of compost out there, it will continue that decomposition process and break that compost down and free up more nutrient for your plants. So it's really very amazing how the compost tea actually works. We'll be brewing it every day here at Anderson Seed and Garden. You can come in and buy one of our refillable containers and be able to fill it up with refills all summer long for free. And I think it's a great promotion. It's a great opportunity for you to use a great organic fertilizer and a compost tea combination, and your plants are going to respond like crazy. A lot of times gardeners purchase a fertilizer and they just really don't even know what it does, because it's a well advertised, nationally known brand, or because it's on sale at the grocery store. There's a lot of reasons why we buy different fertilizers, one for lawn, one for our garden, maybe one for our flowers. But what do the numbers on the fertilizers really mean, and how do all those different fertilizers work? That's what we're going to talk about right now. I'm going to show you how to choose the right fertilizer for the plants that you're trying to fertilize. For example, tomato and vegetable food from Natural Guard, one of my all-time favorite fertilizers. This is an all-natural organic fertilizer. It has a lot of different ingredients in it, but the analysis on the back is a 4-4-5. You can see that every fertilizer will have a guaranteed analysis right on the bag or on the box or on the container that it's in. This is a 4-4-5 fertilizer. The first number is nitrogen. Nitrogen encourages growth. It greens up plants, gets them growing, and makes them go like crazy. Basically, lawn loves nitrogen, corn loves nitrogen. Pretty much all your plants need nitrogen to encourage growth, to green the plants up, and to keep them healthy. The second number, the 4 in the middle, is phosphorus. Phosphorus is, best way to remember it is it's great for root development, flower production, and fruit production. And so phosphorus encourages a lot of fruit development on our vegetables like tomatoes, squashes, melons, cucumbers, things like that. It encourages our flowers to bloom more, and so we'll get more flowers off of our plants. And whether it's perennials or annuals, the phosphorus encourages more flowering, and it also encourages root development. So very important for all your root crops like potatoes, carrots, beets, radishes, anything that develops a root system. And it's essential for all kinds of plants because all plants have root systems, and in many cases they all produce flowers and they all produce seed at some point. So phosphorus, very important, especially for vegetables. The last number is potassium. Potassium is best way to describe it is it's kind of like a multivitamin, but it's not a multivitamin. It does a lot of different things inside the plants. Important things to remember about potassium is it really helps with water uptake, helps the plants absorb up water and utilize that water better. So it helps with translocation. It spreads that water and that nutrient through the plants. So it helps the plants pick up water, helps them pick up other nutrient, and spreads that water and nutrient through the plants, and makes them more disease resistant, more insect resistant, more drought tolerant. It helps with a lot of different essential functions inside the plant. So the potassium is very, very important. Then after that, you've got all the micronutrients. So you've got iron and manganese and boron and copper and zinc, and those all are essential for the plants, but in much, much smaller quantities. That's why they're called micronutrients. And these nutrients, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, are the macronutrients, and that's what the plants really need the most of. Best way to remember this combination is nitrogen makes plants grow up, phosphorus helps with root development and flower production and fruit production, so it makes them grow down essentially, and the potassium is kind of all around. So if you can remember up, down, and all around, it'll help you remember what each of those nutrients does in the plant. So now we know what the nutrients are. We've got a lot of different types of fertilizer we can use. We've got water-soluble fertilizers like Miracle-Gro, but our favorite is the Fertilome Blooming and Rooting. As you can see, the analysis on this one is a 9-59-8. Very high phosphorus. It's great for flowering plants. It's great for fruiting vegetables. It's great for root development. So that's why it's called blooming and rooting, because it encourages flowers, it encourages fruit, and encourages root development. This is a water-soluble fertilizer, so it's one you mix up in water. Water-soluble fertilizers don't last very long. They last for maybe 5 to 7 days. So whether you're using Miracle-Gro or blooming and rooting or any liquid fertilizer, they usually don't last very long. The plants pick them up and use them very quickly. If you shift to a granulated fertilizer like the tomato and vegetable food from Fertilome, this is a 7-22-8 fertilizer. Again, higher phosphorus. That's what most of your vegetables are going to want. They want a little bit of nitrogen to green them up and get them growing, but that high phosphorus for fruit development and flower production. This, in a granulated fertilizer, breaks down more gradually over, say, a 6 to 10 week period. So your granulated fertilizer's much slower than a water soluble, which is only going to last about a week at the most, maybe a little bit longer. Then when you shift into some of your slower release fertilizers like Start and Grow or Garden Coat 6. The Garden Coat 6 is a nice balanced fertilizer. It's a 12-12-12 fertilizer, and the Start and Grow a little higher on the nitrogen. It's right down here on the bottom. It's a 19-6-12. Both of these are slow release fertilizers. They break down very gradually over a much longer extended period of time, and we're talking 4 to 6 months for these fertilizers to break down. And so you've got a much longer release, much slower period of time where they're releasing this type of fertilizer. That's how all the synthetic fertilizers work. When it comes to organic fertilizers like the tomato and vegetable food that I showed you earlier, and say a product like bone meal, natural fertilizers work very similar to synthetic fertilizers, but they break down much slower and over a longer period of time. So they release their nutrient much more slowly. Usually the analysis is lower than a synthetic fertilizer, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of nutrient content in an organic fertilizer. They just work differently. So just be aware when you're selecting a fertilizer what the needs of your plants are. If they want a lot of nitrogen like grass or like corn, you don't want a blooming and rooting fertilizer for them. If it's a vegetable or a flower, you usually want a higher phosphorus. You want something that's going to encourage some flower development and some root development as well too. So a lot of different fertilizers to choose from, a lot of different options. Know what your plants want and pick the right fertilizer to keep them happy. A lot of fruit production this year. We're seeing lots of blossoms on the trees. We're seeing apples with lots and lots of fruit on them, and apricots and cherries and peaches. We just had a great spring, and we're going to be able to enjoy the harvest as well as watching all of the beauty this spring. So one of the problems that we're starting to see though is there's some diseases that have been affecting apples and pears, and also the whole stone fruit family, so cherries, apricots, peaches, and plums. And it's something we need to watch for because it's really going to be a problem probably for the next month or 6 weeks. This is part of a peach tree, and as you can see, the buds have started to come out. So this spring, probably in late April, early May, those buds were coming out. It was getting ready to flower, and then all of a sudden it just started dying back. Now this is a disease that affects stone fruits, so we're talking plums, cherries, peaches, apricots, nectarines, and it's called bacterial bud blight. And the tree looks great to start off the spring. It looks like it's in really good shape. It looks very healthy. All of a sudden the buds start coming out. Sometimes they'll bloom and they'll be beautiful, and then all of a sudden it just starts to shrivel up and die. And we've been seeing this in a lot of trees the last couple of years. Unfortunately, this is a disease that has to be controlled in the fall. So if any of your stone fruits start to do this, you want to get out there with your pruner and prune off the parts that have been affected, but you want to go back about 6 to 8 inches from the last visible damage, since it's a bacterial disease, and once it gets into the tree, it'll just continue to spread its way back through the tree, killing more parts out. So make sure and prune it back 4 to 6 to 8 inches past the last visible damage. And we like to sterilize our pruners after each cut. You can use a tool cleaner like this. It's just an aerosol. You can spray on your tools after you've made those cuts so that you don't spread that disease or spread that infection to different parts of the tree. Or you can use a little bit of Consan. That works really well. There's some very good disinfectants you can use to sterilize those pruners. But what you really need to do to control it is after you've pruned that all out, spray it with a little bit of copper soap or copper sulfate. Copper-based fungicide will help prevent the spread of that disease, but it really infects the buds in the fall. So as your leaves are dropping off the trees in the fall, we need to spray it with a copper-based fungicide or possibly even Daconil to try and stop that disease from getting into the tree in the fall. So usually just as those leaves are falling off, we'll spray it, and then again about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later to try and prevent that so it doesn't show up the next spring. Once you start to see this, it's almost too late, and it's very difficult to control, and you basically just have to prune the parts out of your tree that don't look very good. Same thing goes for fire blight. That's the other disease that is a bacterial disease, very similar to the bacterial bud blight, but it only affects apples and pears. But it does affect crab apples and flowering pears and hawthorns and mountain ash as well too. So there's a lot of trees that it can affect. But for your fruit trees, it's apples and pears mainly. The tree will look very similar to this, but usually it looks fine in the spring, but that bacteria enters in through the blossoms, and then you'll see the fruit start to shrivel up. You'll see the branches start to die back. It actually looks like somebody's held a torch, like fire, to the branch. It'll turn black, and the tissue will all shrivel up and become pleated as well too. That we can actually control after it gets into the tree, but really we've got to try and prevent that in the spring while it's in bloom, because it enters in through those blossoms. And so we can spray it with fire blight spray in the spring. We can spray it with the copper sulfate while it's in bloom, and that will help. But if your tree's been infected, we can actually apply Agriphos to it and prevent that disease from spreading. Unfortunately, the Agriphos does not work on the bacterial bud blight on the stone fruits, but it does work on the fire blight on the pears and apples. We can spray the leaves with it once a month, and it will prevent that disease from spreading back through the tree. But you can also apply it to the trunk, and so you can mix this up about 50-50 with water. You can apply it to the trunk from the ground up about 5 feet, and it'll absorb it in through the trunk, run it through the circulatory system of the tree, and prevent the fire blight bacteria from spreading farther through the tree. So this is the only thing that's out there that will actually work on fire blight after the tree's been infected, other than pruning it out. So you can do the same thing with your trees that have been damaged. If this were fire blight and it was on my apple tree, you can go in and you can prune that off with your pruners. Make sure and go 6 to 8 inches back from the last visible damage, make that cut, and then sterilize your pruners afterwards so you don't spread that, because you can get that on your pruners and spread it from part to part. So make sure and sterilize those pruners between each cut. So despite the beauty this spring, we've got some diseases that are really starting to show up, and it's important to be aware of what you're looking at. And if you see some of this damage showing up on your stone fruits or on your apples or your pears, be sure and get on top of that and get that taken care of so it doesn't spread and cause more problems.
Everyone wants to keep their hanging baskets and planters looking great all year long. Sometimes you come into Anderson's and you pick up your hanging basket while it's looking beautiful, and you just try your hardest to try and keep it looking good all year long, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. There's some tricks that we can teach you to make sure your baskets and your hanging baskets look great all year long. First thing is to make sure that it's in a large enough basket. This particular hanging basket is a 10-inch basket, and it's full of wave petunias. These petunias are going to cascade out. They could spread up to 2.5 feet and get really long. It's in a 10-inch basket though, and a 10-inch basket just doesn't have enough soil to maintain this large of a plant for the entire summer. So we'll actually take it out of this basket, transplant it into a 12 or 14-inch basket, and give it more room to grow. It really helps to take your smaller hanging baskets that look great early on in the spring, transplant them into a larger container, and they'll have more room to grow and more room to look really good. When you're doing that, one thing that I would definitely recommend is mix a little bit of this HydroStretch into your soil. The HydroStretch is a natural material that actually absorbs up and holds water, holds about 20 times its weight in water, and if you mix that into your soil, into your potting soil, every time you water, the HydroStretch will absorb that water up and retain it and hold it longer for your plants, so your plants won't dry out so quickly. When it's 90-95 degrees in the middle of summer, you've got your hanging baskets on a south-facing building, it gets pretty hot, they dry out very quickly. By adding the HydroStretch in there, it will really help the soil retain and hold the moisture longer, so when you do water, it saturates through the entire hanging basket or the whole planter, and will help hold that moisture that you need. The HydroStretch also absorbs up and holds nutrient for your plants as well too, so when you're fertilizing, the HydroStretch will help hold your fertilizer a little bit longer. But we want a basket like this to just cascade and trail out and get as big and as long as it can get. And so using the right fertilizer will really make a difference. One of our favorite fertilizers is this water-soluble hanging basket and geranium food from Fertilome. It's a 20-20-20 fertilizer, if you can see right there. It has 20% nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in it. It's a nice balanced fertilizer that will give a hanging basket or a planter basically all the nutrient that it needs. The middle number, that 20 right here, so I'll show you again, that middle number is phosphorus. The phosphorus encourages blooming, especially in flowers. In vegetables, it helps with root crops and also with fruiting vegetables as well. But for the flowers, we want that high middle number to keep them blooming. But in a planter or a hanging basket like this, where we want it to cascade, we want it to spread out, we need that high nitrogen, that first number, to get it to crawl and to get it to spread. We want that high middle number to get it to bloom and to keep blooming. So we'll actually take our water-soluble fertilizers like the all-purpose, and also like the blooming and rooting from Fertilome. Now the blooming and rooting is a real high phosphorus like I was talking about, so it's a 9, 59, 8, so that really keeps them blooming. we will use these throughout the year, and believe it or not, they only last about a week, sometimes even a little bit less. And so every time we're watering our plants, we think about using a fertilizer. We don't have to do it every time we water, but at least once a week you should be doing it in a watering can, or if you're using the hose. There's a couple different things we can do to introduce that fertilizer into the water. But we'll take either one and alternate them to keep our hanging baskets blooming and growing and looking really good. So we'll go high phosphorus one week, we'll go more of a balanced fertilizer the next week, back to the high phosphorus, more balanced, and so it kind of keeps them going. And when we mix them up in our watering can, we'll add a little bit of spreader sticker to it. The spreader sticker helps that nutrient stick onto the plants, so it'll actually absorb it in through the leaves as well as up through the root system. Once it's into the plant, it'll help spread that nutrient through the plant, make it work faster. So when we mix a little bit of spreader sticker in with our water soluble fertilizers, it makes them work so much better, and just helps them pick up and utilize that nutrient much faster. So we'll mix that in with our watering can every time we water. And then last but not least, we'll use a slow release, long lasting fertilizer every couple months. So this is a granulated fertilizer. It lasts about 4 to 6 months in a hanging basket or a planter that we have to water every day. It's only going to last about half as long. So we'll take, for a 10-inch basket, we'll take about a tablespoon of this and we'll sprinkle it into the flowers. And every time you water, it'll feed them just a little bit. So between the Garden Coat 6 that lasts 4 to 6 months in a hanging basket, so it'll last about 2. We'll do that once every 2 months during the growing season, and then we'll water them at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, with a water soluble fertilizer like the Blooming and Rooting or the all-purpose food, to keep those baskets and keep those planters looking good all summer long.